Hi everybody, my name is Jesse Dutton-Kenny. I'm a museum preparator with the SFO Museum, and today for SFO's Got Talent, I wanted to show one of my talents, which is making stained glass windows. I do this just for fun or for gifts for friends and family, but today I'm going to try to make a stained glass window of our international terminal at SFO, and I'll walk you through my process along the way and show you the final product at the end. The way I start any stained glass project is with a design and then drafting a pattern. Usually that means I have some idea and then I want to make a rough sketch, or maybe I'll use a photograph and then put that into a program like Illustrator or PowerPoint to turn it into a digital pattern. When I make a pattern, the two most important things I'm keeping in mind are the number of pieces and the way that I'm going to make those actual cuts in the glass. Straight lines are really easy, curves can be kind of challenging. So this is the pattern that I've made to represent our international terminal at SFO. It's a little abstract, but I think you get the idea. The next step is to choose glass that will give you the look, color, texture that you're looking for. This is some of the glass that I've selected for this particular pattern, and as you can see, I'm using a lot of really old scraps because it's hard to go out and shop for glass right now. The next step is to cut the pattern out and apply it to the actual glass so that I can make my cuts. I use these special scissors because they cut out an additional amount that accounts for the thickness of the foil and the solder later on. I also like to use this thicker cardstock for pattern pieces because it holds up better while I progress through the project. Cutting glass is probably my least favorite part, but it's very satisfying when you can make a clean break. It's a little bit dangerous, and sometimes if your cut isn't perfect, the glass can shatter. You also want the cuts to be really precise, otherwise you have a lot more to grind off later on. I use a glass cutting tool and a couple of different pairs of breaking pliers. Sometimes I'll use a ruler or a guide, but you need a very steady hand for this process. I also prefer to do this outside. After you cut the glass, it's important to grind the edges. I use a glass grinder with diamond grinding bits, and I grind down my pattern pieces partially because it helps to finesse the piece down to the exact shape of the pattern, and partially because after cutting, the edges are really sharp, and that can be a little bit dangerous, and it doesn't really work going forward when you need to apply foil and solder. So a ground edge makes the project a lot easier, a lot cleaner, and it allows you to get these really precise shapes. Once all the pieces are ground down, they're covered in a dusty layer of ground glass, which isn't very good for you or the project, so it's important to clean them. I do this in a container with soapy water just to get the dust off, as well as the pattern piece. Then I lay the cleaned pieces out with my actual pattern underneath to see how everything fits. I may find little areas that need additional grinding, and I can mark those up with a Sharpie and then repeat the grinding step and cleaning until everything fits just right. Once all the pieces fit nicely, I apply the copper foil to the edge of each piece. Where I'm applying the foil is where the solder is going to flow, so it's important to get really nice clean lines and to make it even on both sides of the piece. I adhere the foil to the edge by rubbing it in really firmly. There's a lot of tools you can use for this. I like using my plastic fid or a roller for this task. And I should note that copper foil is just one method of doing stained glass, but it's really good for projects like this where you have a lot of tiny pieces. Next, I set the pieces tightly together on a workboard using these metal rails so that the pieces will stay tightly in place when I start to solder. Soldering is obviously a super important step in the process since this is what holds your whole window together. But it's also a step that requires a lot of practice to get clean lines. I start by applying flux to the copper foil where I want the solder to flow, and then once my iron is hot, I start by tacking the pieces together at all the joins on both sides. This will hold everything in place so then I can remove the rails. After I've tacked my piece, I start tinning, which is where I apply a thin layer of solder all over, and I'm just concerned about coverage and adhering the pieces together, but I'm not really concerned with the appearance of the solder. I don't need it to look perfect, I just need to apply it everywhere. You can also see that there's some byproduct coming out from the soldering, which is really unhealthy. So it's important to do this process while wearing a mask and having really good ventilation around you. After I'm done tinning, I apply a nice solder bead to all my lines, focusing on a really smooth appearance. I've decided for this piece to just apply solder around the edge, but there are also different kinds of framing you can use. Typically it's zinc. And I've just decided that I'm going to display this piece in a wooden frame eventually, so I didn't attach any framing, but this is the stage that you would do that. So essentially we're done now, but my piece is still covered in flux and needs a really good cleaning. Often I just start with soap, water, and a sponge, but there's also flux remover products that you can buy. I then go over all of my solder lines with some steel wool to really clean the fine particulate off. So you may have seen that traditionally stained glass has black lead lines, but solder doesn't actually come out black. It's very shiny and silver. Some people prefer to keep it this way, but others really prefer a patina. So that's what I'm going to do here. I have both a copper patina and a black patina, and here I'm applying black. Before I apply the patina, I need to make sure my piece is really clean, and because these are toxic chemicals, I'm wearing gloves and keeping the patina away from my skin. Then I apply the patina with an old toothbrush, and you can see how quick it is. It really changes color instantly. I let it sit for a moment, wipe off all the excess, and there you have it. Okay, we made it to the end. This is the final product. This is my little window. So as you can see, this is a craft that I really love, but it's a complicated process and it takes a lot of steps and specialty tools. So if anyone is interested in learning more, please feel free to ask me any questions or send me an email and we can talk about how to get this going if it's something you want to try. One more time, here's what we've made. Thanks very much.